Hello Algebra 2, today we are looking at Chapter 10, Lesson 1, which is right angle trigonometry. A trigonometric function is a function whose rule is given by a trigonometric ratio. A trigonometric ratio compares the lengths of two sides of a right triangle. The Greek letter theta, which is basically a zero with a line in the middle, is traditionally used to represent the measure of an angle, acute angle in a right triangle. The values of the ratios depend upon theta. So for this we have sine, cosine, and tangent. Sine is the ratio of the opposite leg to the length of the hypotenuse. The cosine is the adjacent to the hypotenuse, and the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. And so one way that I really learned this in high school and remembered it was writing it out like so, ka, toa. And that's just one way I remembered it. You can come up with your own too. Okay, so example 1, find the value of the sine, cosine, and tangent functions for theta. So the sine would be the opposite over the hypotenuse, which would be 7 over 25. The cosine would be the adjacent over the hypotenuse, which is 24 over 25. And the tangent would be opposite over adjacent, so 7 over 24. Moving on to another example, find the sine, cosine, and tangent. So the sine of this one would be your opposite, which is 30, over your hypotenuse, which is 34. So 30 over 34, which is 15 over 17 when you reduce it. Your cosine would be 16, which is your adjacent, over 34, which is your hypotenuse, which reduces to 8 over 17. And your tangent is your opposite over your hypotenuse, so that is 30 over 16, which is 15 over 8. Some of the more common triangles that you will see for right angles would be your 30, 60, and 45 degree angles. And another one would be your 45, 45, 90 degree triangles. So for the 30, 60, 90, your side lengths would be 1, square root of 3, and 2. And then for your 45, 45, 90, it would be 1, 1, and square root of 2. And looking down below at the table, this is a really handy thing to write down because these are ones that you will use a lot. So, an example, use a trigonometric function to find the value of x. So here we used sine of theta, and then right here you plug in 30 for your theta, and then you would put x over 74 because that is your opposite over your hypotenuse. And then looking back at the last one, sine of 30 is half, so you plug that in for your sine of 30 degrees and then set that equal to x over 74, and then you get x equals 37. Okay, next example, find the value of x. So we're going to use sine once again, and then we will do sine of 45 degrees equals x over 20, because you are doing your opposite over your hypotenuse once again. And then if you go back a couple slides back to that table, you will see that sine of 45 degrees is the square root of 2 over 2. And then you'll set that equal to x over 20. Then when you solve that, you'll get x equals 10 times the square root of 2. Looking at example 4, a surveyor whose eye level is 6 feet above the ground measures the angle of elevation to the top of the highest hill on a roller coaster to be 60.7 degrees. If the surveyor is standing 120 feet from the hill's base, what is the height of the hill to the nearest foot? So step 1, draw and label a diagram to represent the information given in the problem. So here's your diagram. Step 2, let x represent the height of the hill compared with the surveyor's eye level, and then determine the value of x. So here we're going to use the tangent, and then your angle is 60.7, so plug that in for theta. And then looking at the triangle, you will put x over 120, and then multiply both sides by 120, and then use a calculator to solve for x, and you will get 214. And then to determine the overall height of the roller coaster, since the person's eye level was 6 feet above the ground, you need to add 6 to 214, which gives you about 220 feet. The reciprocals of the sine, cosine, and tangent ratios are also trigonometric ratios. They are functions cosecant, secant, and cotangent. So the cosecant is your reciprocal of the sine, the secant is the reciprocal of the cosine, and cotangent is reciprocal of the tangent. So this is another table that would be very handy to write down. Example 5, find the values of the 6 trigonometric functions for theta. So step 1, find the length of the hypotenuse. So to do that, you'll do a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and your hypotenuse is your c squared. And so it doesn't matter which one you do for your a and your b. And so solving that, you'll get 74 for right here. Step 2, find the function values. So for your sine, that is your opposite over your hypotenuse, which is 70 over 74, which gives you 35 over 37 when you simplify it. Cosine gives you 12 over 37, and tangent gives you 35 over 12. For your cosecant, you will do 1 divided by your sine, and that gives you 37 over 35. Your secant is 1 over your cosine, which gives you 37 over 12, and your cotangent gives you 12 over 35. Also looking at this, we can see that this and this is just flipped. So you just flip the numbers, and that's the same for the rest of them also.